What's good, y'all? So, to continue on this talk about getting a job in academia, I find it extremely important to talk about letters of recommendation. Now, you might not think, oh, this is not as important, but it's more important than you think. And finding the right ones is just as important. Or, you get what I mean. So, let's talk about it. So, and I'm kind of doing this out of order. And the only reason why I'm doing this out of order is because when I did the last video, I was like, oh wait, man, that's actually I need to talk about letters of rec because your letters of recommendation can be requested at any time. So one, it's important, highly important that you find your three. No, actually, have three, four, or five people that you can rely on. Now, I'm gonna tell you about my situation, right? So I have I got three people that I can generally rely on. I had two extra that I was using just because it made my application look good, if that makes sense, right? And it's only because so I use someone different along the way, so they can see that I kept relationships, and that's important. So something that I always do, right? I send a yearly email to my mentors and to the people who I would want letters of recommendations from, and I send yearly emails to them saying, "Hey, hope you're doing well. This is what's going on with me," so they keep up with me, right? So when I ask them for letters of recommendation, it's not like it's some out of the blue and they don't know what the hell I'm doing right now, right? Specifically, I started this with my undergraduate mentor, and I started sending him updates on like grad school every year, what's going on, how I'm progressing, everything like that. And he has been a mentor and a letter of recommendation, a letter of support to me this for years since leaving grad school, or since leaving undergrad, right? So keep those relationships. Those relationships are so important because they will help you get a job. And I'm gonna tell you about my situation and how I got this job in a little bit. But um, so I try to keep people who I've been either in the lab or in the at the university along the way. Especially, well, as we know at Georgia State University, I can't use that PI. However, I did have someone who was the graduate coordinator at the time who um, is always willing to help and support me. So that's always nice. Always have some kind of connection, right? Um, but so it's pertinent to talk about that. Sometimes, so going on the job market and being in these rooms, and I especially found this out at the beginning of doing my putting myself out there time when I was going on these future faculty or building future faculty things, right? And one thing that we talk about, because they talk about the job market and going on the job market and everything like that. One thing that they talk about is letters of rec. Now, some places was like, oh, we require letters of rec up front. Some other places was like, we're trying to do away with letters of recommendation. And I've heard that more often than not. So a lot of places are trying to do away with letters of recommendation, especially up front, because they feel like it's a barrier. It doesn't supply equity because not everybody has a great relationship with people that they, you know, that they were in labs with, right? Even in my case, right, I lucked out because I was in a lot of different labs and I had really great people along the way, but there are these there are people who have been through situations where they don't have the support or the letters of recommendation or that people that they can go to for letters of rec, right? So keep that in mind, right? So they're trying to make sure they provide equity. Some places don't give a fuck about that, other places do. So some provide it up front, And then I know in my case, it was required on the back end. So you go through the whole process. So some places like I guess some of the more top places, right? So they'll require it for the application to be submitted, right? Or and then if they don't require for the application to be submitted, then they will then ask for. I remember, was it Duke or UNC? I think it was UNC who didn't require a letter of rec at first. Then when they were interested, they was like, "Hey, you have." I think they said a week. I think they said a week, and it was like 5 days or something like that. You have 5 days to get your letter writers together and send us your 3 letters of recommendation. And I'm like, what? So basically, I moved on in the process, and this was their next test. And yeah, it was absolutely nuts. I was like, yo, do you know professors, bro? Like, do you know that how hard it is to get them together for anything on time? So it was, well, I was like, it was a little crazy. So you might get something like that. Just have now I like before, and actually, let me backtrack. Before I even went on the market, I told my letters of recommendation or my letters of support or my mentors that I was going on the market and I will be requesting letters of rec. Just because I did that doesn't mean that they're going to be responding like that, right? So, you might get stuff like that. Now, for my current job and a lot of different places that I applied to, they didn't want a letter of rec until the back end, right? So it was basically to confirm or to check a box. It was like, okay, we have your letters of rec. I don't think they even read them. I think they was just like, okay, we want you, we have let me it's for HR pretty much. It's an HR checkbox. It's like yeah, we got their letters of recommendation. So keep that in mind, right? Like some places are trying to do away with it because they know how toxic academia and science can be, and because of that, right, they're trying to make sure that everybody gets a fair chance to get a job in academia. And some people will try to derail you, right? And when I say that, I remember I had my previous one of my previous PIs. I read one of his letters of rec about my research, and thank God that I was able to get my hands on his letter of support, which wasn't support at all. He basically said, "Oh well, he discovered these things, but they're not substantiated claims, or his claims can't be substantiated." Or he was like, "There's no proof that this is even real." He basically called my research fake because he didn't believe it himself. So make sure they might seem like they're on your team on the surface. Make sure that they're on your team. Like even if you, because a lot of different PIs will have you even write their letter of recommendation. Do that instead. It might be a little bit more work for you, but at least you know what's in that letter of rec, right? So he wrote his own. It was extremely short and it basically bashed my research. So I cut him from my list of letters of rec completely. And I'm pretty sure because I was using him for a little bit just because my some of my research stemmed from his. And so I was just like, oh, okay, let me use him as like gives it some substantiated claims or gives it some footing. But it looked like he was trying to undercut me the whole time. It's all good. This is science. I feel like everything happens for a reason. I ended up in the place that I needed to end up. So I'm glad I caught that before really, really getting heavy into the job market. But you want to catch those things early. Okay. So that's my story about that. Make sure that you let your letters of recommendation or let your letter of support know. Write the letters of support, mostly, and then give them a kind of a template. Because if you give them a template, then they'll most likely just go off of that template, and it's less work for them, right? Like, hey, and especially unless like so, my undergraduate mentor, he already had letters of rec for me, so eh. And then one more thing before we go. So when I got this job, the one thing that they needed from me before they officially offered me, they needed my letters of rec. So they was like, "Hey, tell your letter writers to send their letters of rec to me." I was like, "Okay, bet." So I had three. I had my two send them in. Boom, they sent them in like that. It was like I was like, "Hey, man, I think they're about to offer me. Like, go ahead and send those things in." There was one, Jesus Christ. There was one um, who he decided that he wasn't going to send it. I guess I don't know. Like sometimes in this letter writer, he can be really on it, or he can just be like ghost. So what happened was, like the head of my department was like, "Hey man, like they're not sending like do can you reach out to him?" I reached out to him. I emailed him, no reply. So I texted his ass because the next step was calling his ass. He got back to me, but then he was like, "Yeah, yeah, I sent it in," but then he never sent it in. Then I was just like, you know what, fuck this shit. So I went to my most reliable letter writer, which was my undergraduate mentor, and I had him send it in, and then I was offered the job. So always have a backup. Always have a backup plan because sometimes things don't go the way you think they're going to go, and people are non-responsive. Okay, so yeah, keep all those things in mind, right? When you are finding your letter writers, because let me tell you, it can be extremely important, and it could be the last barrier for you to get that job. Um, I wanted to get this video off before I forgot about talking about your letters of recommendation, but that's all I have, you guys, this week. I am the scientist who live, aka wait, you know, I keep flipping those. I'm Dr. Stevens, the scientist who live. I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.